Welcome to the Point of Convergence podcast. I am your host, Grant Lira. Get ready to sit down, tune in, and implement. Remember, the knowledge you learn here and anywhere else in your life is only worth something to you if you use it. So get implementing after this episode and enjoy.
So I couldn't see, I couldn't stand, I couldn't talk, couldn't smell. Rushing blood through my ears, which made hearing difficult, and I also lost my sense of taste. So basically, there's an area at the base of your brain called the pons, which is where the spinal column slots into the bottom of the brain, and it's called the information superhighway. So all signals go across the pons, even ones for like the eyes and the nose, even things in your head go through this point in your spinal column to be centrally fed back. So I had it's my right side body. I had a left side pons stroke. And basically, after a couple of months in the hospital, they did an angiogram where they stick the camera through your arteries. And you've got two arteries at the back of your neck called the vertebral arteries. They come up like this. They join in the middle and they feed into the base of the brain for your autonomic breathing and heart functions. So each of the 5 mini strokes, I'd sort of temporarily died and then come back again because the heart and lungs stopped. And then the only reason I'm not dead is because I had the 5 mini strokes, and on the angiogram it shows this complete blockage, and so an artery is like that. I'd grown these 2 little blood vessels like that around the blockage, and that's why I'm not dead. But if I laugh too hard, or when I've been swimming, so I'm at a different elevation, when I stand up I get dizzy.
So that's interesting. Now, within all that, though, because I know you're working on a few different things now, like how is what you're doing now, how is that connecting like to your entire life before? Like, why do you feel so passionately about what you're doing now, and what does that look like for people who don't know yet?
Yeah, so basically, I thought I was going to die. They said, we can't do anything for you. There's a stent, there's an operation they do if there's a blockage. Couldn't do that. There's nothing they can do. So, and the guy came into the room going, I've never seen this on someone alive before. So got out of hospital, paid for my funeral, gave away anything that had been in my cupboards for more than 5 years untouched to the hospice, gave the hospital a load of clothes because people with strokes come in without clothes, gave away loads of stuff, and because I'd been planning, once I realised that I was a goner, I was working out how much death taxes my family would have to pay, because I had compensation for the accident. I owned my own house at the time, and they would have had to pay about $140,000 in death taxes, and they couldn't afford that. So I'm trying to offset this money. I didn't want to hide. I'm not a hide it under the covers type thing. Anyway, so I'm ready to die, but I'm not ready to give up. So I get brought back to my dad's house after I come out of hospital, and it's a 3-floor townhouse, and my old bedroom was on the top floor, and my dad said, oh, we'll get you a bed down here. And I said to him, how am I going to learn to walk upstairs if I don't walk upstairs? So for the next 3 months, I'd struggle up these stairs, lifting my right leg on, shaking as it came down, and I didn't fall down all of them, but I fell down one flight at least 3 times because the muscle in the right leg just I couldn't get into I couldn't lift it more than a couple of inches off the floor. So I was dragging it forwards and then standing on it and go like that. So ready to die, but I thought, right, fuck this. I'm gonna join the gym next to the flat I got bought that was closer to my dad's. Join this gym, even though I can't speak properly at the time. I'm like, oh yeah, that's how I was talking to this guy. He goes, oh, you should volunteer in primary school. There are no men in primary education, or few men in primary education. And I went like, well, I'm fucking dead in a week, so I'll do that. And I filled out all the application forms, contacted the coordinator, and the following Monday I was in volunteering as a classroom assistant. Now, I was only physically able to do half a day a week because at that time I was going to the gym 3 times a week. And I was just weak, and I would pass out like this. But when you're in a room of children of 7, they're on you. So you can't be passing out. So the need to stay alert built resilience. And then, and this is where it starts to get weird. So I see things like other people, and then I have a whole load of other things that happen inside my head to represent what I'm looking at. And most of them have nothing to do with what we would generally agree we're looking at. Um, so when children are happy and giggling and laughing, they literally glow. I see them, but I see, and we talk about the light in children. So I guess I'm just imagining it, but they glow, and it's a blinding white light, and they'd be glowing and really happy, and the teacher go, "Rah! Sit down, face the front," and they go, and I'm sitting in the corner of the classroom going, why are you turning the lights off? Do you not understand? Why are you doing this? So I did that for a while, volunteered at special needs education, autistic children, non-verbal, and it's now that that I learned in NLP really start to pay rewards, because non-verbal, with autism, the children have quite pronounced things, so shaking around from side to side, or it's difficult when you can't speak but you're 8 or 9, because clearly you're going to get frustrated. But if you actually pay attention to these children, you can notice all sorts of things. So there was one girl called Poppy who was physically independent but totally tuned out, like staring up into mid-space like that, totally isolated from other people. So NLP 101, build rapport. So the first day I'm there, I'm out in the playground at lunchtime, and she is rocking against the fence. So I go down maybe 10 meters away, kneel down so I'm the same height as her, and rocked against the fence. And she turned round and looked me dead in the eye. Then she came over and she hugged me, and she wouldn't let go of me for 5 minutes. And everyone's going, oh, Poppy doesn't do this, and she doesn't like that, and she doesn't like this, and she doesn't like that, and blah, 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 blah. And everything that people tell me simply isn't for me. As it was with hospital radio, as it was with the fact I should be dead, as it was with my strokes, as it is with my relationship with children. So I went through these various volunteering experiences. The school I was at first paid for me to become a teaching assistant, which I'm professionally qualified in. I met a woman in 49 years, I've only been in relationships for a total of 2 years in total, and each of those relationships were 12 or more years apart. Because I never bonded. So although I can look at a woman and think, yeah, I think you're fanciable, the idea of all the stuff that you do apart from the sex bit is like, why do I want to do that? Unless you're bringing something extra to the party. So anyway, but this woman is a PhD, and has a law degree, works as a technology transfer director for a medical university. So Pfizer and what's the blue pill, Viagra. That Viagra was being made as a blood thinner, I think. And the erection effect was discovered, and then it was repackaged. That's the role she did. So wow, I'm thinking, wow. Brief story, I was about to go on a 2-month holiday because I wasn't working, and she flew out to Australia, flew for 3 days to see me for 4 days. So naturally, I offered to marry her because no one had ever shown me that comparison before. Didn't work out for various reasons. We'll speak about another time. So that was 6 months out of my volunteering in schools because I put my full attention on the thing I'm doing. Didn't work out, so I went back to the schools. Went back, and it was the deputy head teacher was the volunteer manager. She was under a great deal of pressure and screaming at children. And I made a mistake because as a volunteer, you're not allowed to be alone with children. And my function was to help children read, and if you know about self-belief and you know about state and you have empathy, you can tell a child or a person is not up for it. And there were these two kids, black kids without fathers, all the stereotypes. And it took me 3 or 4 weeks to get them to look at me in the eye and just smile, to converse. And I took them outside to deal with their belief systems with physical things. So one was doing a keepy uppy with a ball, and one was swinging across bars, and I got them just to breathe, to center themselves, and to visualize. And they both doubled their performance in the moment. So 40-second intervention, and they doubled what they could do. And they looked at me and I said, "That's how it works, mate. You decide what you want, and it happens." And it happens better and better and better the more you think about it. And it left a big. But then the deputy head teacher come down and said, "Why are you? Where's your reading books?" At the boys, I'm going, "Fuck it hell!" And then she started screaming at me. Now I don't care, because I have this mind where you could be screaming your head off at me, and all I'm seeing is a cartoon version of you making a stupid noise, because I run these different visualizations internally real time. So she screams blah blah blah, and I went to the head teacher, who was the bloke I met in the jacuzzi, went fuck this, and I was hugely furious. So I went back, sat in the gym in the steam room for a couple of hours, and then thought about a way for children to defend themselves. So I reasoned that I've got over various things in life. I am using my brain to do it. If I can find out how I do it, I can give the children that knowledge. So, because I'm recovering from stroke, I'm aware of rebuilding my consciousness. So, like for 3 years, I couldn't walk and talk at the same time. Because of the amount of neurological concentration. So I was building up my brain, reading books. There's a therapy, high pressure, hyperbaric oxygen therapy. There's various foods, cumin, broccoli, things like all these things, omega-3 oils. So I was doing everything to ramp up my cognitive performance for my own sake. But then I realized that, all these things I'm doing, which involved NLP, could help the children. So I'm rebuilding my brain. I've seen the Anthony Robbins thing. So I think, if I can think of a way of turning that into child-friendly stuff, I can give them an anchor which they feel good about. So basically, I designed this thing using this rumbling trance music, cleared all the dust out of the classroom, and the kids. So I get the kids to run into the session, scream and and there was loud music and bouncing around So basically, here's the thing. So primary age children, their brain waves operate predominantly on delta waves. It's the same signal as adults when we're asleep. So they're an open book. The trouble is that the way they teach, you get barriers to learning. So they put up the barriers because it's not fun, it's disciplined, it's just not a fun environment. Whereas what I was doing was creating a fun environment so I could teach them. And the teaching was never specific. It was always about frames of reference, visual illusions, psychology, neuroplasticity, neural associative tapping, basically. And I created all this stuff, and I was giving my time, still volunteering, because I'm running through the last of my savings at this point. And so volunteering, and I volunteered in 18 schools. Only the last 2 schools did I do in the school every day for 8 weeks. All the others up till then had been 1 hour a week. And it was only when I was in the schools that I got to see the true nature of the problem. And the problem is basically the adults. And so there are many things involved, but basically I created this program and I wrote a book about it, which is this one here. Children Spectacularly Want More Adults. And that is me on the front cover, aren't I lovely? And basically that's 400,000 words. And what it basically says is this: if you're not an asshole to children, they can do amazing things. But the way that I arrived at that was I saw this thing called ability. They'd say, on the basis of a test, a standard test like you have in America, at the age of 5, They would say, "Oh, that's your ability, that's your ability, and that's your ability," and then they'd position the children around the room on their perceived abilities, and talk to them as they felt appropriate. The trouble is, there's a thing called growth mindset. So if you tell a child something as a fixed mindset feedback, they believe that they can't do any better, and that's what we do in the entire education system. Um, and I was getting further and further away from education. The children loved it, the adults hated me. I didn't understand why. Then, because I'd written it down in this book, early on in the book, I go, yeah, it's like having 6 or 9 spheres of perception. Because I become aware that what I did in my head was I had these different views, and it wasn't until I came out of that final school and started volunteer after a year of not helping a child. I went to a secondary special educational needs school, and these kids were branded as behavioral problems, but they clearly couldn't read and write. And so I there's a woman I was constantly connected with who teaches children with dyslexia and dyscalculia how to spell and how to do maths. So I contacted her, spoke to her. She said, buy my book. I bought her book, Bridges to Success. And in her book, there are various statements from patients, clients she dealt with, and they say, I see the world in multiple perspectives. And I went, oh! Then I remembered that I'd failed English. I couldn't spell, punctuate, do grammar or anything. But in my age, you were just stupid. You were put in a low set. So I'll just quickly read some. Sorry about the time, but it's just, it's quite a lot to unpack.
Go on. No, this is good.
So there's a book called The Gift of Dyslexia.